The press is often called the first draft of history. Today, that draft is being heavily edited, if it is being written at all. We are living through the collapse of journalistic trust and the extinction of local news. To understand how the media fractured, we have to track its descent across 8 specific historical nexus points. The first point takes us to 1968, during the golden age of national broadcast television. A few major networks held a captive audience every evening. Walter Cronkite sat at the CBS anchor desk and delivered the day's events to tens of millions who accepted his reports as objective fact. That year, following the Tet Offensive, Cronkite traveled to Vietnam. He stepped out of his neutral role and delivered a rare personal commentary, declaring on national television that the war was mired in a stalemate. President Lyndon B. Johnson reportedly concluded that if he had lost Cronkite's support, he had lost the support of Middle America. A single journalist possessed enough authority to shift the political calculations of the White House. The press operated with immense unifying power, serving as a widely accepted check on government action and establishing a shared national reality. Our second nexus point arrives in 1970. Outside the national television networks, local print journalism operated as highly profitable civic infrastructure. Newspapers held geographic monopolies, printing daily editions that physically connected a city's residents to their immediate surroundings. The economic engine driving these massive operations was surprisingly mundane: the classified section. Short, text-based advertisements for cars, jobs, and apartments generated roughly 40% of a newspaper's revenue. Those transactional dollars quietly subsidized the expensive work of placing reporters in city council meetings and funding months-long investigative pieces. Congress officially protected this structure by passing the Newspaper Preservation Act of 1970. The law permitted competing newspapers to merge their business operations into joint operating agreements. The stated goal was to keep multiple editorial voices alive by legally shielding their shared advertising monopolies from antitrust laws. Print media functioned as the primary civic glue for American communities. Because that public service relied entirely on a localized advertising monopoly to pay the bills, the entire system harbored a severe structural fragility. Nexus Point 3 begins in the late 1960s and 70s. Richard Nixon viewed the mainstream press as a hostile entity. His political operatives recognized that relying on journalists to interpret the administration's actions was a liability, so they began looking for ways to bypass the media filter entirely. A young television producer named Roger Ailes helped package Nixon for the screen. Ailes experimented with staging town halls, packing the audience with supporters, and planting specific questions. He treated the news cycle as a fixed television show, not a forum for independent reporting. Fast forward to 1996, our fourth nexus point. Ailes partnered with Rupert Murdoch to launch Fox News, fully actualizing his vision. He built a television network that deployed journalists while operating with top-down, ideologically driven talking points distributed to the staff daily. The network packaged right-leaning political strategy as a 24-hour news broadcast. Viewership numbers surged as programming focused heavily on cultural grievances and appeals to white resentment. The clear line separating objective journalism from aggressive political campaigning began to blur. The era of a shared national reality, championed by figures like Cronkite, dissolved. In its place, highly engineered, ideological echo chambers emerged, shifting the electorate by telling a specific segment of the population what they wanted to hear. This chart shows the collapse of the local print monopoly during our fifth nexus point in the early 2000s. As internet access expanded, the steep downward line tracks the sudden evaporation of local newspaper classified revenue, while the rising line represents the rapid growth of digital search and online marketplaces. Platforms like Craigslist and Google offered better, cheaper targeting without being restricted by geography. The massive profit margins that had quietly subsidized local journalism vanished, leaving regional newspapers starved of the capital required to fund their investigative budgets. While local papers bled cash, prestige national print media suffered a severe self-inflicted wound. Nexus Point 6 arrived in 2003, when the public record regarding the lead-up to the Iraq War failed under scrutiny. The New York Times published highly flawed reports claiming Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction. By relying heavily on anonymous government officials and defectors, the paper inadvertently amplified the Bush administration's public relations campaign, helping to secure support for the invasion from Democrats and centrists. The economic foundation supporting local accountability evaporated at the exact moment legacy media suffered a massive breach of public trust. These dual failures set the stage for an industry-wide collapse. By the 2010s, our eighth nexus point, local newspapers were struggling to stay afloat. Their massive print facilities and downtown offices became highly visible assets attached to failing balance sheets, attracting the attention of Wall Street. Hedge funds stepped in to acquire these historic publications. Instead of investing in digital transitions, they executed a strategy of extraction. They sold off the physical real estate, liquidated the printing presses, and aggressively cut the reporting staff to squeeze out short-term profits. Since 2005, nearly 40% of the nation's local newspapers have closed. 1 in 4 Americans now lives in a county with 0 or only 1 newspaper. These vast, expanding areas without dedicated local reporters are known as news deserts. The internet provided the initial disruption, but Wall Street provided the killing blow. The destruction of local civic media was a deliberate, extractive financial liquidation that prioritized asset extraction over community information. Which brings us to Nexus Point 8, the present day. American journalism has bifurcated. National media operates as a highly profitable, ideologically polarized battleground, where audiences seek out validation rather than information. Meanwhile, comprehensive local coverage is effectively dead. The absence of local reporters carries steep, measurable costs. Studies show that when a newspaper closes, voter turnout drops and municipal borrowing costs rise because investors factor in the likelihood of unchecked corruption. Without shared local narratives, community issues like school board schedules mutate into nationalized culture wars. Now, artificial intelligence threatens to scramble the ecosystem again. Generative text and automated search summaries are positioned to further distance audiences from verified human reporting, intercepting the few remaining dollars that reach actual newsrooms. To save the first draft of history, society must stop treating journalism as a commercial product. The advertising monopolies of the 20th century are gone, and the current models relying on clicks and partisan outrage only deepen the fracture. Rebuilding the trust we lost requires establishing new funding models, expanding nonprofit newsrooms, and treating verified reporting like public libraries or fire departments. The media must be urgently rebuilt as essential, uncompromised civic infrastructure.